welcome back to our discussion on feminism and reconciling it in an African context. You are with myself, Umsamo Mkize, not my father, the slightly better looking one between the Mkize men. So thank you very much to those that have been engaging us on our social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'm actually going to read a quote from one of our followers who said, "This feminism is so Eurocentric. It's built under the European culture, which makes African women to be against culture because they are looking down on African things with a colonial mentality and self-hatred. We need to acknowledge that our history has been distorted by our colonizers. They made us believe that our culture is at its root cause oppressive in nature." Now, Manje, I want to talk about a particular African custom called umhlonyane, which is what we do in the Zulu culture, when a woman has a first period. Because I think in African culture, there's a lot of celebration of womanhood and femininity. I think we celebrate women, you know? So when we do umhlonyane and she has her first period, there's a lot of jubilation and kunomgido, and we dance and we sing because this girl is now becoming a woman. She's able to bear life and bear children, which is something to celebrate. But now, I understand, Candice, in your research, doing your research on menstrual health and the importance of menstrual health, sometimes this is not necessarily the case. Right. And that African culture has been manipulated in such a way that it's oppressive when it should be celebratory. In your research, what have you found the menstruation or period of a female? What are people doing when it comes to that?
So I'm using a methodology of process tracing, so looking at the custom that it is in present day and linking it back to how it first began. So interesting enough, it first began, as you mentioned, as a celebration in which women were honored. It was a transition, a beautiful transition from being a young girl to a woman. And over the time, I think, as the comment said, history distorted that and used it as an opportunity to then oppress women. So in my research, what I'm doing is that I'm looking at different Eastern Southern African countries to understand the sort of taboos and norms and culture practices that they use when girls do actually menstruate for the first time and what actually happens. So example, in Malawi, they have a man who has sex with a girl for the first time when she's just menstruated, and you can imagine if a girl has just had a period when she's just 8 or 9 years old. So it's a very traumatic event in which you take something that has been sacred, that has been honored, celebrated, and you distort it because of what patriarchy sort of views women and men to be.
So now another one that I think there's a big misunderstanding about, and it's been brought to my attention. Myself and my father were discussing this early on, the process of umemulo. And I was told that umemulo is only done for a woman if she's not a virgin. If you have to, you must maintain your virginity for you to enjoy this celebration of your womanhood. And I phoned my father and I consulted with him, and we were both flabbergasted at the fact that there are people that think umemulo is something that you deny your daughter because she's not a virgin or because she has a child. Now, Nico, I want us to expand on the implications on discrimination, because umemulo is something that can be done for a boy. If Idlozi Mekaya says, no, then they would do something of a similar nature for me, but my virginity will not be questioned. So can we expand on the implications of such a belief, or an incorrect belief, that you need to be a virgin for your womanhood to be celebrated?
Okay, I can't speak much on umemulo itself, as it's not necessarily a ritual or that I celebrate at home or with the cultures that I've been raised in. But what I will say is the concept of virginity, yes, is predominantly feminine and associated with women, because one, it's difficult to tell biologically and physically whether a man has had sex or a boy has had sex for the first time. Whereas with a woman, there is some kind of convoluted opinion around the hymen and virginity, right? And I know there's a lot of virginity testing within the Zulu culture, but so what the hymen is a thin layer, right? That sort of covers your vaginal canal, and it sits there, right? And some women have the experience of having that tear during their first sexual encounter,
Right.
which allows them to bleed, right? Which causes blood. While other women can have their hymen tear unaware, right? Some women can have their hymen tear by riding a bicycle.
Lifting weights also does it.
Jumping over
Over
fences. Others, of course, all this describes a kind of physical activity that we perhaps wouldn't associate with women so much. Well, what the world would like to think,
Exactly.
right? Women should and should not be doing, right? Some women could tear their hymen the first time they use a tampon, right? So we can celebrate whatever we want to, really, whenever we want, because culture is that. Culture's hybrid, culture changes. But I do think there's something to ask questions about if we're going to base it on a concept of virginity that is one skewed only towards testing the virginity of the woman,
Yes.
and secondly based on a flawed kind of examination where the hymen can tear by through many other kinds of activities.
So the problem with, for me, virginity testing, because I understand the anatomy and the physiology behind the hymen and how easily it can be broken. And it is scientifically a very flawed way to gauge someone's femininity or someone's womanhood or someone's dignity, rather, to put it simply. So now you're touching on something very important in the way in which we raise our daughters compared to the way in which we raise our sons. Manje, Koko, none of us here have children. We're both very young.
He's a prophet.
You have a grandchild and you also have children. Do you think,
Grandchildren.
sorry, that there is something wrong? Are we raising our daughters differently to how we're raising our sons? But is it detrimental to the future of South Africa, the difference in which we are raising them?
There is a very big difference. I would say because I think I've got 4 girls and there's only 1 boy in between.
That's fine.
So, so raising the girls and coming to the testing of virginity, it's something very secretive. It's not something that you can just do exposedly in front of everyone. Because your virginity, I believe, it's where you keep your womanhood. So if we say we're going to raise the children and raise the girl child, we raise them differently from the boy child. Fathers are there to nurture you. Mothers are there to nurture you as a boy and as a girl. So if I've got a baby girl, a girl who will be washing dishes, surely Tebucho will be washing dishes as well. Dineo, Kuku, and Tembani cannot just wash dishes on their own. Tebucho will be there. He has to cook. That's why he can cook today. That's why he can do his own washing. Though my son is married, right? But he can still cook for his wife because it's how you bring them up. It's not about being a girl or being a boy. A child is a child in my household. A child is a child.
So if a child is a child, are we not raising our children to view sexual intercourse differently as opposed to the boys and how the girls do it? I think, Nico, you can touch on this a bit more or expand on it. Koko,
Let me just, before she comes in there, I'm saying to you now, you can teach a boy and you can teach a girl. Listen to this one. A father has to teach a boy their own things, their own way, because they know culturally the boy has to know exactly what is expected of him as he grows. What is his job at home? How is he supposed to behave? And that behavior doesn't mean is to hit a girl or is to abuse girls. That child, the boy child, is being taught at home to love. That's all it matters, to love, to protect them. But if he's not going to protect his own sisters, do you think he will be able to protect his wife? This is where the problem is.
Nico,
They are taught to protect.
you want to say something?
Okay, so we speak
You can
about
differ
the
if you
different
want to.
ways
Yes.
that we raise boys,
Boys
and
and
girls.
girls.
Feel free.
Right?
Safe
I feel
space.
like the biggest teacher of difference or gender rolling, I think, happens at a primary school level, where we are forced to stand in different lines.
Yes.
Yes.
Where we are forced to dress in different uniforms, where we are forced to use we are forced to have different favorite colors.
Basically.
Yeah.
Where we are forced to like different toys, where we are forced to use different toilets altogether, right? At a school level,
Yes.
girls and boys use the same toilets. You know, that's fine. People play with whomever they want to play with. Of course, there will be that I like blue, you like red. No, you're not
Yeah.
supposed to like red. It's a boy's color. You're supposed to like green or yellow. But I do think that our education system
Yeah.
plays a
Plays
big
big
role,
role, yes.
right? Where sexuality is concerned, when it comes to how we raise boys and girls. I think that's a domain that I don't think we do well in. As as African people within our household, because we never teach women how to engage their own sexuality.
Okay.
And I feel like what then happens when we are raised like to think, okay, my virginity is now the cradle of my womanhood, is that I'm conditioned to think that pleasure or sexual pleasure is predominantly left for the male,
exactly.
right? And that becomes very, very problematic. And because we don't teach, or at least the conversation around speaking to a boy child about how to conduct themselves sexually. I'm not going to say that the rape stats in South Africa are now the reason for all of this, but you can imagine the kind of how South African men express their sexuality, right, has led to us being unsafe walking in the roads at night, right?
Even during the day.
Even during the day, right? People will be harassed, etc., etc. So yeah, I think
My concern
that's
is what she mentioned about how, you know, it's the father's job to nurture and care for the son. But what if the father's only had a violent background? What if the father's only known to be violent? So does that mean that he has to bestow violence on his son? It seems that as a society, I feel that men are told that rage is the most masculine thing to do. That's the best way that you can sort of portray your feelings. And that if you cry about it, if you feel pain, if you have feelings, that's a feminine thing. Suppress it. Don't do that. So I think that's also a very important thing to sort of deconstruct and understand as to what it is that men are teaching their sons. Because to me, if that was the case, if men were teaching their sons to be loving and caring and respectful, we wouldn't have women being raped on a daily basis. We wouldn't have women being burnt alive. We wouldn't be having these horrifying statistics and newsreels of how women are just being constantly disrespected every day. So I think it needs to. Yeah, we need to look at what it is that men are actually saying to their sons.
But let me throw a
think
spanner in the woodwork also quickly.
Yeah.
Because I also feel like we're having a gender essentialist conversation about this, right? So we can speak about how we raise our women and how we raise our daughters and how they must marry each other. What about everybody that lies in between that, right?
Right.
Children who identify as LGBTIQ, etc., and the kind of violences and how they have actually been at the center of the conversation about gender rolling and sort of saying, no, we're not actually going to be told what to do simply because we were born in this body. Or maybe, in fact, I do not identify with the body that I've been born in. So don't expect this of me, right? And then let's have a conversation also about who's worthy of love and who isn't in that regard.
Well, I think one thing I can say is that patriarchy is just assaulting to everybody.
To everybody.
Men, women,
Patriarchy is the problem.
So my question is, so between myself and my father, what I learned about being a man from my father is that I've always been taught that, listen, Siabo, the implications of you going to impregnate another woman, you must do this. You must go, you're keeping klawul, you know, I've been taught the protocol.
Yes.
You know, but I can't assume that everyone has the privilege, and I think the reality in South Africa is not everyone has that privilege of growing up with a father that was going to teach me those lessons. So manje ma, Koko, where do we get these lessons?
I agree to disagree with you. It's not only fathers who can teach their boys to do that. I did with my own son. I did.
Elaborate, please, ma.
Yebo. He got his lover, which is there from primary, and they went to Sunday school together, and all of a sudden they were now, you know, lovey-dovey, and they loved each other. And you know what he did was the way we taught him how to behave. We didn't have to wait for those people to come. He actually came and told us what he did. I said, Mom, I'm scared. I don't even know how to say this to you. But I have impregnated Udeli. And I didn't even know who Udeli was. I'm just making an example. It's not everyone who would say, okay, today you are going to impregnate somebody's child, and then tomorrow you're going to run away. This is where violence comes in, because there was no support from that boy when he impregnated that other girl. And now there is no support from either mother or the father. And now this child thinks, now as he grows, and he thinks, Uguti manje, this is the way to go. If I want something, I'm just going to grab, have it, it's mine. When I'm done, it's like you're throwing a girl into a dustbin.
As if she's disposed.
It's like a disposal nappy. So you become very violent. But if your father, and you were fortunate to have a father that will sit down with you and say, this is how a man should be, and this is how you should behave. Uma kwendeka ukuthi umosha umntwana womuntu, hamba uyohlawula, uyobhadala inhlawulo. That inhlawulo, that doesn't mean this woman belongs to you, because umhlawulile. You are only paying the damages of what you've done. You've broken her virginity. Hello? Now you must pay. It's a punishment for the boy. At the same time, it says, sorry for spoiling, you know, what I was not supposed to, but eventually, these two people, they knew what they were doing. It's not like they didn't know what, even if they were busy under the tree, they knew what they were doing. They were naughty. Then he or she got pregnant. And now this boy must now go and say, I'm sorry, to apologize to that family for breaking that virginity. That's part of feminism.
Do you not think that because our our cultural identity and understanding amasiko ethu and how we should go and following the protocol, because it's undocumented, our cultural identity is fragmented. Is it not breaking our homes and families?
It does, because nobody seems to care who does what next door. If only we cared about the neighbor next door, surely this world wouldn't be as bad as it is now. It's because we don't care about what's happening next door. Just building very long walls. Now, it's everyone for himself, but God for us all. Now, instead of seeing, you can see a boy who's being or chasing a girl from next door, which is your neighbor in your community. You just say, it's not my child. You don't even care about it. This is where the society is lost. We're losing those, even those boys who are in the right path of growing up. They turn up to be nyaupe substances, what did it, smoking, whatever, the nyaupe boys, bonomain, because of lack of love. You know, if only we have love, love the child. Just love one child and see the difference you will get in the townships.
Candace, how do we restore our cultural identity? How do we bring understanding and to people that think feminism is an attack on African culture? How do we let them see that feminism has always been there, we've just now put a name to it?
Well, I think we we have to have more discussions around this. I think we also need to have a curricula, in fact, where children are learning
100%.
critically, engaging with literature that shows that pre-colonial women have always been empowered, but then we had this disruption. Based on this discussion we've had, we need to have some sort of documentation to show that, you know, feminism is not actually a thing that we associate with bra burning or punching. You know how men always tend to assume that women who are feminists are always angry and burning their bras. In fact, feminism is just, it's an opportunity. Feminism is the opportunity to make a choice and respecting the choice that we make. In a sense, allowing women the freedom to live the life that they choose to live. And that's to me personally what feminism is. And so we need to respect the varied feminism, but also show men that you need to debunk the myths, the misconceptions that of feminism that exist. Because when you engage on Twitter or social media and you post a feminist post, men just disengage. They don't want. They're not willing to learn.
They want to retweet.
No, you rather just want to watch football. But it's like, how are we going to progress as a society? How are we going to move on? How are you as a man going to be no longer annoyed that your timeline is filled with all these stories and news? You have to do better. You have to do something about it. So I feel that the ball is in the side of the man. The man, it's in your court now. It's in your side, and we've done enough. We've protested enough. We've cried enough. We struggled enough. We've suffered. We've done enough. So I think men you guys have to rally together. You have to do something, because we've provided enough information as much as I am concerned.
And you're right. And ending on that note, Candace is correct. The ball really is in our court, gentlemen. We have to do something about it. Enough protests, enough memorandums, enough marches, enough speeches, enough songs of praise of women, and let's actually start doing something and having a hard conversation. I think the biggest thing we need to do as men is keeping each other honest. Amongst our friend groups, when we're having a drink or two, let's keep each other honest. And in light of that, next week, we'll be having a special father and son edition in which we bring the ball into our courts as gentlemen, and we're going to discuss manhood, masculinity, and fatherhood. What does it mean to be ubaba? And what lessons are we instilling? What lessons are we learning? And you can see myself and my father disagree in a healthy way, which builds our relationship, and you can see what goes on a little bit at home. Thank you very much. Catch our repeats Saturday evening, 4:30 to 5:30 right here. Good night.